Welcome everyone to our second webinar for our online women's forum for Rugby Americas North.
So I suppose one of the places I want to start is, if you notice, instead of saying breaking the glass ceiling, I actually have beyond the glass ceiling. And so for me, that was really important. And it was one of the things that I've learned recently in the course, that one of the courses that I've done because of the scholarship program. And thinking about beyond the glass ceiling, many of us face different glass ceilings. And so definitely in terms of the smaller unions and the island unions, we're in very different spaces to some of the other larger unions with bigger populations. And also when we look at things culturally, we all have very different journeys. And so beyond the glass ceiling is making sure we reflect not just on our journey, yet looking at the journey of others and recognizing that everybody's journey is special, it's unique, and it's important to them and it's valid to them. So oftentimes one of the big things about going beyond the glass ceiling, especially as women, is that because somebody will say, well, this is the way I did it, it's almost a matter of, so you should do it this way. So one of the major things is that we all have different paths, as I've said before. And so what I'm going to be looking at is how do we support each other and how do we go beyond the glass ceiling so that even though it's there, we're not afraid of it. And so we look at it in a very different way. So it's about changing the perspective and reframing it so that it's something that we know that, hey, it's there, it's a challenge, and we move beyond it. And so not to think that we stop at that point. So as Erin mentioned, I am the vice chair for Jamaica Rugby, and my journey is different from Christina's. My father's English, my mother's Jamaican, and I was born in Jamaica. And I grew up being surrounded by community rugby, family rugby. And it was a fantastic experience because I got to be out with my dad. My mom will tell you she wasn't a rugby woman, yet in terms of the support was always there. And sport within my family was always very, very important. And so going out to Caymanas, which was where we used to have rugby in Jamaica a lot, that was a really important part of growing up and seeing what rugby was like. Admittedly, growing up, it was seeing the boys play, and I was one of the few girls initially that was out there. So already an image of what rugby had been formed or was being formed for me. And so I had to change the perspective in order to move beyond the glass ceiling. And because I will come to my love of rugby and how rugby really impacted me in the next slide, I want to stick first and say how we view rugby, how we see rugby, the experiences that we have within rugby shape our expectations of rugby. And so it's being aware of those expectations, because sometimes those expectations need to be challenged. And where we sit might not be where we want to sit, and we might not even be aware of the opportunities or options that we have within the rugby space. And that's certainly part of my story, is that I did not see the glass ceiling because I was not even aware of the options or opportunities beyond the glass ceiling. While I was preparing for the presentation, I contacted a number of women across the region. Not everybody. There are some that I'd hoped to speak to and didn't get the opportunity to do so. And one of the things that's crucial and that we're seeing more of is that there are a lot of unions where there are women doing studies on the gender bias within sport and specifically within rugby. And it's important for us to get that information and to share that information. Within the Caribbean, one of the things that I'm very proud about is that a number of the small emerging unions, a number of the unions full stop, actually have a good balance on their executives, on their boards. Off the top of my head, Bermuda, Jamaica, and St. Lucia all have 3 women on their boards. And, that certainly, definitely other places think, wow, that's an accomplishment. And for us, we think, well, yeah, it kind of makes sense. And so it's looking that everybody's path and journey is very different. Now, when we're changing the mindset, it's also looking at that support, and that's really important. And so for me, I got into rugby not because of just knowing rugby in Jamaica. I went from Kingston to Kingston. So that's Kingston, Jamaica to Kingston upon Thames in London or in Surrey. And I met the incredible group of women that are there on the picture. The smallest person on the team was the individual that came to me when I was watching a men's game and said, do you want to play for the women's rugby team? And I looked at her and I remember thinking, she's tiny. And I said, do you play? And she was like, yeah, I play. And I was like, well, hey, if you play, I can play. And that was my first real introduction into playing rugby. And that was contact, that was 15s. And it was an incredible opportunity because the one thing that it gave me, first and foremost, going into this new space, this new environment, this was in the first 2 weeks of university, I found my part of my tribe. I found a group of women that were interested in community, that were about fellowship, that were there to support each other. And, I can date myself. It's a picture from 97, so a while ago. These women are still in contact with me. These women, they shared the information. And it's that kind of support that we need to build and we need to look at. And it's one of the reasons that I love the game of 15s. Because within 15s, within the Jamaican 7 space, I would never have been a player, simply because I don't run fast. But I could hit. I do well at tackling. And so as Christina mentioned, it's about knowing your strengths. And within the space of 15s, for a number of the women that I spoke to, it gives a different sense of community and it gives a different sense of support. And so this is certainly one of the reasons as well to encourage and develop 15s within the region, because it's certainly more inclusive. You have lots of different shapes and sizes playing within that space. Yet it wasn't just about the women that were there. We had 1 women's team and 2 men's team within our rugby club. And what we saw was that there was lots of unity amongst the two. And for me, the first board I sat on was at my university. So it was the Kingston University Students' Union Board. And I was president of that board. And that happened because of the support of the rugby community. And not just the rugby community, the sporting community and the fellowship that was there. And so by playing together and spending time together and fellowshipping together, it was bringing and showing that we were all equal and we all had things to bring to the table. And so it was a great opportunity and it was exceedingly empowering, because when I was at school in Jamaica, I went to an all-girls school and I was told, you know what? You are a woman, you can do anything. And that was reiterated when I went to Kingston and I was part of this women's rugby team that did really, really well in the first year and just continued to excel. And so it's looking at the importance of having a community and supporting each other when we look at going beyond the glass ceiling. So in the picture, you can't see me. I'm on the other side of Bronwyn, who's number 1, and we were lifting dolly. And one of the big things that I always remember is that you never needed to see me because we all had different roles to play. And that's the same with the glass ceiling and breaking through and going beyond it. It's recognized that each and every one of us, we have a role to play. So if we're at the top, I'm not there yet, I'm heading in a particular direction. However, if we've reached the pinnacle of where we want to be, it's really important to turn to others that want to go into that place and say, hey, how can I help you? How can I assist? What can I do? And one of the things that I so grateful for is within the Women's Rugby Scholarship Program, I have connected with and spoken to and become part of a group of really incredible women that are willing to share. So when I have an issue or when I have a problem relating to things happening in my union, I can go to them and I can have a conversation with them and I get support. And that is crucial. And advice, really good advice. So when we're looking at that support, it's not about being visible, it's about giving that support so that the person that's there, just like Dolly, we wanted her to get the ball, and we scored a try from that one. St. Mary's lost big time to us that year, which was fantastic. Yet it's looking at that it was teamwork. And so this group of women, what I found is I found a team, I found other groups of women to speak to and to get information from. And one of the things that I found it very, very important to do is to connect with the other women within my region. And so, that's something that we're looking at. And I've certainly spoken to a number of unions already as to how we can make that happen. It's about building that community and making sure that women within our space know that there are opportunities that they can go for, and that we know there's a glass ceiling. And it was really interesting when I was talking to one of the players about the glass ceiling. They said, well, I just do what I need to do to win, to play. I love playing rugby and I want to get involved in that space. Yet it's looking at that retention as well of our players. What happens when our female athletes don't have the time to play and decide to do other things? It's looking at that and bringing them back into our space to say, hey, we would love you to be a part of this. So for me, beyond the glass ceiling and the support and looking at how we create that space isn't just about assisting individuals who know what they want to do. It is showing all women that there are pathways, that there are things that they can do, and these are opportunities for them. And also, certainly from a small union perspective or from the Jamaican perspective, for us, it's important to make sure we put in steps. So to create sessions. And so this is something that we've been talking about, doing a wild, so that's women in leadership development within the Jamaican context, and to a number of unions and some of my fellow members of the scholarship group, we've been talking about how do we support other women who are not in that group or who don't want to share in that way, and what are the glass ceilings in that space. So it's recognizing that life, just like our roles in rugby, more like a jungle gym, not necessarily a ladder. We can move from one space to another. So for me, I started out as a player in England in a 15s position. And then by chance, I was asked, I was talking about rugby to the chairman of Jamaica Rugby, Jerry Benswick, at a rugby league game, and saying, that I had some extra time and I'd love to volunteer and help. And the next thing I know, I started my journey for vice chair. It wasn't something that I had aimed for. It was something that came upon me quite suddenly. And for me, luckily, because of my experience on a number of boards, I was able to bring something to the table. And when, Christina spoke about succession planning, that is so crucial, because it's about ensuring that there are enough people that are interested in governance and interested in leadership within our space, so that we don't have a situation of stagnation. We have a situation where people are growing and developing and new ideas are coming in. And I think with the jungle gym, it's recognizing that people bring different things to the table. And if we find ways to encourage them, if we find ways to bring the information in, then we're creating an even more interesting space. With jungle gyms or the playground, like the picture that's there, Everybody has a different skill, everybody has a different path, and everybody's voice is unique. And if you put all of those voices together, we really get something special. So for me, that is really important. Now, when looking at the takeaways and, you know, sitting here doing this presentation for you, it's so interesting because I've literally just finished the Cornell course on women in leadership. And for me, you know, I own my own company. I've been a leader in industry for a long time. I've been part of, you know, senior management teams for the last 15 years. It was really interesting in terms of a learning experience, recognizing things that I had not seen before. And I think that's crucial, is that, you know, we always have to continue our learning. And within that learning, we should share what we learn, because it opens different eyes, and it opens different opportunities, not just for us, it also does it for others. So these are the points that I want to leave with you, the lean in. Now, what does that mean? And this was quite interesting, is that it's making that decision to either go or get out of here. So it's lean in or get out. And it's as simple as that. If you make a decision, make that decision to actively pursue what it is you want to do and what you want to accomplish. And so that's certainly something that I even say as a coach and as a mentor to individuals. The other thing, and this one was really interesting, was about sitting at the table. Now, for me, I have been at a number of RAN meetings, AGMs, and I've sat at the table, you know, sort of. And this is what I recognized only from this course, is that although I was present, for a lot of the time, I wasn't visible. And so a lot, you know, when individuals talk about sitting at the table, culturally, women tend to, and this is not everybody, you know, each of us are different, but culturally we tend to sit back and we wait for other people to talk. So even in a discussion, the men will be talking and we will sit and we will wait or turn. Or if we're even at the table, and one of the examples that I'd heard used in regards to it was that we sit further back from the table, so not right up and close to the table. And so it's recognizing the crucial element of being present. So if you're there, you need to pay attention. You know, Christina says, make sure you're bringing something to the table, and that's crucial. Be prepared. And yes, for women, it's about being over prepared. And if we take it that step further and look at women of color, it's being even more prepared again. So it's that when you sit at that table, you have something to offer and you know what you're talking about. Now, Christina also mentioned the fact that we have two ears, and it's true. Listen, pay attention, watch what's happening in the room. Take that time. Just because you're listening, though, doesn't mean that you're not sat at the table. It's about being present and actively engaging in the listening. One of the other things is keep your hand up. How many times have you been in a meeting and time is running out and they've chosen a couple of individuals and you thought, okay, well, because of the time, I'm going to put my hand down. I'm not going to ask my question, or maybe my question isn't important, or maybe I'm the only one thinking this. Your point is valid. Whatever point it is, whatever opinion you have is important and it's valid. And you are there with your hand up. Keep your hand up. You know, use your voice. Speak. And that's really important. Keep being present. Keep being there. And for the ladies in the room, and even for the men that are in the room, support is crucial. And it's not just support of those people that you're in the same union with, or those people that you happen to play rugby with. You know, it's about supporting each other in lots of different ways. And so when you look at networking, the networking is about creating those support mechanisms. and being there. So building trust and being willing to listen and to give. So if you notice with support, the hand is open, and that's really important. It's about lifting each other up. And I have to say, I was floored by the amount of support that I received in regards to the article, from the Dominican Republic to Scotland to Trinidad. The support was absolutely unbelievable. And for me, that showed that, we're moving in the right direction because we're supporting each other. Yet that means having conversations. Within the Caribbean context, I know we're competing against each other. And then within the RAN context, we're competing even more, not just against the other islands, we're competing as well against Canada, USA, and Mexico. Within that competition, it's important for us to find ways to communicate and to recognize that by building the entire region and all of RAN, that we're lifting everybody up, and we're going to make it so much more interesting in regards to competition, learning, and development. And so, yes, opportunities may be more visible in other regions. It's for us that are seeing the opportunities to share those opportunities and to talk about those opportunities and pathways. The other thing that was really interesting was the concept of don't leave before you leave. I hadn't thought about this at all until somebody said that the majority of women will leave the minute they leave mentally when they decide that they're moving on to a new job, or deciding to get married, or deciding to have children, or deciding to do something else. Before they finish, they leave mentally. And so for us, it's really important to recognize that if we are somewhere, if we are present, take the time, stay, do what you need to do, complete your task. Don't leave before you've left. So if you're sat there, be there and be very clear. So I just want to leave you with an African proverb. If you want to go quickly, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. And for me, being part of the scholarship group and being part of Women in Rugby means that, we have a far way to go, and the only way to do that is together. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you, Keisha-Ann. Really good information. We have a lot of questions. Some, I think, could maybe be answered by both of you. So I'm going to do the ones that are a little bit more specific to Keisha-Ann's information first, and then we'll add those other ones in. So Keisha-Ann, you talked a lot about your tribe and that support tribe. So one of the questions we have is, how do you recommend finding that support tribe, especially if you don't already have one, or you're not even sure where to look for that?
Okay. I think that's a great question, because I can tell you I was feeling a little alone for a while within the region. And so I would say, I think there are a lot of women out there that simply need you to just say hi. And I would start there. I would say, if you want to try, hey, I'm here, Christina's here. I'm sure, Christina, I'm volunteering you.
For sure.
Reach out to us, and if we can't signpost you in the right direction, because maybe it's a tribe that's within your geographical space or time frame, and as well, and like I mentioned, I've been speaking to a couple of people. So I've been speaking to Maria and Gemma, so that's Gemma from Bermuda and Maria from Trinidad, about us creating an online space where we can create that tribe and to have those conversations. So if that's something you're interested in, kind of say hello to any of us. So definitely by just reaching out, because there are probably a lot of women in the same position.
Wonderful. So some of these I think you can both kind of answer. So Christina, if you do have some thoughts on some of these questions, feel free to jump in. Question is how, and I think this is a good question, because as we start to take on more, there's that question of balance. So how do you manage your personal, professional, and rugby duties as you start to get into these positions, obviously more come up. So how do you manage that and balance that?
With great difficulty. So depending on who you talk to, rugby takes over my entire life. So I believe that I was dealing with things for rugby until probably about 1 o'clock this morning, and then the entire day today. So it depends on what you're doing as well. I mean, I'm really lucky in that I own my own company, so I can be flexible. So it's very dependent on where you are in your journey and what it is you want to do and where it is you want to give. I think if you have a working board with all members taking an equal share, and if it's more structured, then you can minimize the time, yet it's recognizing that it does take up a lot of time. Yet this is where the passion comes in. You have to be passionate about it.
Yeah, I think women are really good at organizing ourselves. If anything, working women seem to be able to do it all. So that's what we're good at.
All right, we have so many questions. This is fantastic. What are some of the best strategies you can offer to utilize your male allies without giving away all of your power and have them speak on your behalf? And that could go to both of you.
Yeah, repeat the first bit of it.
Yeah, so what are some of the best strategies you can offer so that you're utilizing your male allies, but you're not giving away your power or your voice and having them speak on your behalf?
For me, it's about building trust. And that trust takes time to build. And it's also about recognizing strengths on both sides. And so knowing that asking for help doesn't diminish your voice, asking for help actually shows that you're willing to listen. I think as well, when we look at gender balance and gender biases, it's really important to recognize if we're doing the take charge or the take care, because oftentimes, we're forced to take one position over the other. And so by having the male counterparts there, they can also give us that feedback. Christina spoke about getting feedback as to how we're presenting ourselves, and that's really crucial. So finding out from the other male counterparts. And I found that I speak to a lot of, and this is recently, because I've decided to be conscious about it. I've reached out to men within the rugby space at different levels and asked questions because it's information I don't have and I don't know. And you'll find that by asking questions, as Christina had mentioned in her presentation, you're showing a willingness, and so people are willing to go to the bat for you and to support you rather than trying to take away your power. Christina?
And they will share your passion for rugby. I find that if I talk to them, if we have the same passion and the same concerns, eventually those barriers are broken because we're all working towards the same thing.
And I think if I could add anything, I think express that to your male allies. Let them know that it's important that you don't lose that power or that voice, so that while they're advocating on your behalf, that they're advocating you in the right way and knowing that they're respecting your power and your voice still and kind of bringing you up at the same time. All right. So this one was Liz again. She said, I love the visual of the expression beyond the glass ceiling. And she's acknowledging there's still inequalities in terms of financial support for the women's game and the expectations of that support. So her question is, within your scholarship network, are there any conversations around how or if more financial resources can be directed into the development and commercial growth of the game? And maybe what I'd add as well, that might make it a little bit more general, is how can those conversations maybe happen within each individual union? Because even if it happens from the top level, like maybe more community level or union level, throw that one out to you.
I think it's a great question. Christina, I don't know if you want to take it because I know there's lots of discussion happening.
There's too much on that, but one thing I'd like to put out there would be at World Rugby, we are looking at, the the scholarships were going to go on for a few years, and we've extended that because it's been such a successful program. But it made me think, how many women in Canada have done that, and how many people, stakeholders in Rugby Canada, know who these women are and what they can bring back. So I think it's a little bit of a two-way street. We have to, when these leadership program women come back, they bring back a lot of experience, but at the same time, we have to be open to listen to them. And there's going to be more finances. Katie at World Rugby is working very hard at growing the game for women in all aspects. And this is one of the aspects that she's undertaken. We're on phase 2 now. I think. Yeah, phase 2, just to grow the game. Keisha, what do you have to say?
Well, I was also going to say that, so one of the things that was shared with me by another woman from another union, another vice chair, which is great, and this is the reason to share it, is that there is also a lot of funding available from the Olympic associations, the International Olympic Associations, for women in sport and for women in rugby. And so, you know, there's lots of great information out there as well. And when we're looking at creating spaces, because it is uneven, and it's something that, you know, was spoken about in the interviews that I had with some of my players, was that part of that is we have still a culture in some places where women's sport isn't regarded as highly as men's sport. And if anybody has watched women's rugby, they know that's not true. So it's getting it onto the channels and getting our sportswomen to really start speaking out and being more visible, and doing some of the things that we need to share the information. So, you know, I've seen 2 really brilliant strategic reports in terms of women's rugby, both from Bermuda and from the African Union, that were shared. And so I think that's part of it. I think if there's a strategy that's working to help increase funding, there are also companies that are very female driven. And so, you know, part of it is also about finding ways to write those reports and proposals and having that information.
Wonderful. So I'm going to do one more question. I know that there's more out there, but we'll hopefully be able to address some of it within it. And then while we're answering this last question, Keisha-Ann, if you can pass me back oh, you did already. Never mind. You're already on it. One of the questions that I thought would be a good one to kind of end on, especially with the 2 of you in the positions that you're in, can you share a bit of your vision for women's rugby within the Caribbean and within Rugby Americas North, which for those that don't know, Rugby Americas North region includes Canada, US, Mexico, and all the Caribbean islands, and then a few other outlying unions as well. So maybe from both of you as kind of a summary, kind of your vision for women's rugby, maybe within this topic or maybe some of the other topics as well. But that'll be a good one to kind of end on, and then we'll address some other things.
So within the Jamaican context, first what we're doing is, one of the things that we're starting is Wild Jamaica. And so that's Women in Leadership Development. And so we've reached out to clubs within our group and different individuals to say, for women that are interested in participating and taking part and sharing best practice, this is something we really want to do and really want to encourage. One of the other things that we have done and spoken about, certainly within the scholarship group, is look at ways, you know, in Jamaica we have a female coach who is a level 2, Lisa. She's incredible and absolutely amazing. And so it's looking at opportunities for her, for other coaches, for other referees to get more experience outside, and so to do things with other unions. We're also looking at, well, I'm just thinking, what can I say that's still not in the planning stages? There are big things happening and lots of conversations, I think, and this is what's important. It's the conversations within the unions, within the clubs, and within the other unions as to how we can build and create. I think we will see a lot more happening with women's rugby in the region. And I think we have to have the conversations around it, and we have to keep having the conversations. And maybe, one of the things is to really engage groups that have done exceedingly well as women athletes and see what did they do, what tools can we use from them. I know World Rugby is doing a lot and has some great plans coming up, and certainly I know a number of unions as well are very excited about where their program is going. So watch out, we'll soon have more 15s from the Caribbean as well, not just USA and Canada.
So for me, it's again, it's start the conversation, it's network. We had a women's initiative ran by Rugby America's North. Maybe we should start a women's advisory group at RAN and try to bridge the culture between countries, women playing rugby in Canada, the States, Mexico, and the Caribbean. Try to get them together and help each other, because I'm sure Mexico has a lot to add and to help on some of the experience women are going through there. And Canada has gone through some of those experiences. They probably have something that they could share, but it's all in sharing the experience, and it's in networking and helping each other up. I say up, not out. So we're all helping each other to achieve more rugby for women in our region.
I just noticed somebody asked about the scholarship. So Christina, I don't know, is it happening next year?
So Erin is gonna put up, at the end, is gonna put up some websites on women's governance, on in where you can find information for the scholarships. You have to be nominated by your union or your club, or your union has to, to support you. So, and then I'll try to, Erin, will you send me some of the questions and I'll try to answer them as best I can?
Absolutely. So so the scholarship program is, it has gone over, I think it's the last 3 years. And each region's allowed to select a number of scholarship recipients. So you do an application process to Rugby America's North with an endorsement letter from your home union. So if you live in the United States, it'd be USA Rugby. Live in Jamaica, Jamaican Rugby. There's information on Christina's link here. And just as an example, if you were on last week's webinar, Rue, who was presenting on the webinar, who's fantastic, was actually a scholarship recipient, and then now she's just recently been elected to the RAN Exco. So I know there are some questions around, like, what about after their projects and where do they go? So that's just a proof that that kind of program works. So I would encourage, if your home unions could do something similar. I love that the Jamaican Rugby Union's doing their own wild initiative. So there's some of the stuff that you can implement in your own community as well, since those programming things do work. I've just sent through the Dropbox, so you should have access to Keisha-Ann's PowerPoint, and then this document that you're seeing on your screen now. And then lastly, just to wrap up, so we have recorded the webinars, and we'll get them up probably tomorrow on the Rugby America's North website. And you'll also have the links to the Dropbox as well. So if we didn't have any questions, I'll send them to Christina and Keisha-Ann, but also you can contact me if you have any questions. My email is up on the screen, and then I can make sure that I put you in touch with Christina and Keisha-Ann also.
And I will answer questions in French as well, because I saw somebody had
French, Spanish, and English. Keisha-Ann, English, anything else?
Solo un poquito español.
Okay, perfect. Perfecto.
And so if people want, are looking for a rugby tribe, and, please just reach out, contact me.
Perfect. And I just had confirmation, Katie Sadlier, who is, and I'm going to butcher this, Katie, sorry, the general manager of women's rugby, I think is your title, for World Rugby. She just clarified in the chat that the scholarships are definitely happening again next year. So keep an eye out for the application process, which typically happens in the 3rd or 4th quarter of the year. And then we do some application review and everything at the beginning of the following year. So at the end of this year, keep an eye out. join Rand's social media and website and newsletter and all that, so you're staying up to date on when that's available for you. Thank you, Katie, for that. So last thing, just again, thank you so much for all the attendees for attending. It was fantastic conversation and discussion. Huge, huge thank you to Keisha-Ann and Christina as our panelists, and Alejandro for interpretation as well. Really enjoyed it. We have 2 more of these for the next 2 Wednesdays. Next week is going to be, and Keisha-Ann, you mentioned this and gave a great transition, is the more inclusive game, which is how do we get to 15s? So for some of those smaller unions, how do we start building women's rugby at the club and community levels? So hope to see you next week. If you have any questions, let us know. Thank you very much and have a wonderful evening.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.